Hello YouTube, this is Wisps and Whimsy, and you are watching Starting Out Solitary. So, this week we are talking about gender roles and our deities and how we relate to them within our path. And originally I thought I wouldn't really have a lot to say because I do not have a specific pantheon that I work with, and I do not have gods or goddesses that I work with in the sense that, most people do. So it seemed like this would be a very easy and quick video to make. But I realized as I was thinking about it that even though I lean more toward pantheism. I see gods and goddesses as archetypes that we use to relate to a higher power, and so that we kind of shape them to our own needs and interests. But at the same time, I realize that I am very much shaped by how I was raised. Raised in a very conservative Southern Christian household. And so God was definitely masculine. There was no question, there was no discussion. To entertain any kind of concept of female deity was just absolutely unacceptable. And I found that very frustrating. Obviously the lure of the forbidden is there. And so when I was young, the concept of Lilith, someone who came before Eve, and just the idea of a female figure having as much power as any of the masculine powers was very tantalizing. And I think a lot of that was because as a woman, as a girl at the time, you feel very much like you are powerless within that structure. There are male role models, there are male authority figures, and women that you see tend to be in, even if they are leadership roles, they are more subservient leadership roles, which can be very frustrating for women. And I think that's something that a lot of us, as we've come into paganism, we've dealt with. And it also kind of feeds into the questions of gender and, whether you're cisgender or whether you are trans or any of the different identities and sexualities that we are finally starting to recognize and accept in our culture. Just the traditional religious backgrounds that we have tends not to recognize them or to vilify them. And so that can be very frustrating for many of us. I think unfortunately some of us come into paganism and we kind of feel like there's a similar structure there, particularly in Wicca. I know I've heard several pagans who are gay or who are trans and have said they don't feel like they belong, like they don't identify with the archetypes that they're being presented with. They don't feel accepted within rituals that are very male and female oriented. And I think that's sad that we still have that kind of attitude when we've come out of a paradigm that seems to be very structured and strict and unforgiving in that way. At the same time, I think a lot of what our deities and pantheons are built on are those traditional gender roles because they have that history behind them. And so it can be difficult to break free of that and find a different way of relating that allows for a more open sexualities, more open identities, more fluid nature of things for us. And I think that's something that we're building. And I think a lot of the eclecticism and the re-identification within paganism is driven by this need to address all of us and not just the parts that are the traditional accepted roles. And I think that's a good thing. I think questioning ourselves and questioning what we've held to be true in the past and, deciding what is acceptable to bring it with us into the future is a really good thing. So for me, on a personal level, I feel like I have had a lot of identification of the masculine god in the past. And so for me, I kind of lean more toward the feminine now in a way of trying to balance that out. And I think in some ways I'm finding myself feeling like I'm overcompensating for what I was not given when I was younger. And so I do recognize that while I do identify with the feminine now, and I identify with, you know, a feminine moon, and I identify with the feminine energies, you know, as we kind of perceive them in a traditional way, I also feel like I need to allow myself to be open to re-emerging with the masculine in my spirituality, because that is something that, you know, is, although I may not feel the need for it right now, I have masculine parts of myself. I think we all have a feminine and masculine side to ourselves, and recognizing that and, you know, nurturing that side of ourselves can be a good thing. And so I'm trying to keep that in mind as I'm going through my pagan path. I do feel like I have kind of swung back and forth, so to speak, and so I am trying to be more balanced within myself and within my practice. But for now, I think trying to compensate and balance out that hyper masculinity that I feel I was raised with is probably an okay thing. I guess that's really all I have to say about it. I would love to hear your thoughts on how our culture, how our gender roles within our society, how the history of gender and class even, definitely gender and socioeconomic status have been intertwined through the years. So if you have any thoughts on this, I know I've covered a lot of ground and there are so many different discussions to be had within this, but if you have any thoughts, any points, I would love to hear them. Definitely open to hearing other people's thoughts. And I apologize for the way this has kind of gone all over this little tree. But it's kind of been hard to find a good spot to sit and just be. There are bugs all over the place. With the spring comes the pollen, and following the pollen comes the bugs that want to spread it around and all of that good stuff. So fun times in the woods, let me tell you. But on that note, I hope everyone has a wonderful Wednesday, and I will talk to you soon. Many blessings.